Welcome. We have started now. I'm Katerji. Welcome to the Katerji Show. As always, I'm your host. We're reporting live from Kyiv. Reportedly, there are some incoming, so you might hear some boom, boom, booms in the background, but rest assured I should be okay where I am in this part of Kyiv. We have a very special guest joining us, Marika. I'll let her introduce herself and what she does shortly. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it. I know that I'm just starting out, and there are still sort of some wrinkles along the way, and I'm really glad that you guys are patient and can bear with it. So yeah, welcome to the show, Marika. Thanks so much for joining us. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on in Georgia. We'll start a little bit about you, and then we'll move on to the situation as it stands today.
Hello, thank you for invitation. It's my pleasure to be here. So I'm Marika Mikiashvili. I think most of people know me from Twitter, where I post 24/7 updates on Georgia. I'm Foreign Secretary for political party Droa, which is currently part of Coalition for Change. It seems to be the largest coalition currently in Georgia in terms of support. From democratic forces, of course. I also lecture at Alta University in Tbilisi, and I guess that's it.
Okay, and like basically, I'm not sure that all of our viewers will know everything about Georgia and the events that have happened recently. So maybe you could tell us a bit about a bit of a primer, particularly basically the elections that were coming up. Georgian Dream, the current government, they were doing really, really badly in the polls. It looked like they were going to lose, and then suddenly election night happened and the total opposite happened. So as you know, talk us through what's happened basically from that night, starting from that night to now.
Yeah, definitely. There definitely was a wind of change atmosphere in Georgia starting from last spring, the Russian law protests. So we were protesting this foreign agents law, which is a much bigger deal than it's sometimes communicated to Western audiences. Not least so because the word agent in Georgia means spy. So they were declaring all dissent as foreign spies, basically. Yes, and there was this atmosphere of change, and we thought that, well, before in Georgia, there always used to be this carrots and sticks intimidation vote buying campaign before election day, which sadly we call like normal rigging, like usual rigging, not normal, sorry, but usual rigging. But we had this anticipation that it would be possible to overpower, like overwhelm this kind of manipulation, pre-election manipulation through a high voter turnout. So that's why we had this like big campaign on everyone needs to vote and so on. But the Kremlin outsmarted us, and they rigged the election on election day proper. Also, like they rigged around 14-15% of votes. And Russian election scientist Roman Udot, for example, he also agreed with our estimates that around 300,000 votes, which is 14-15% of votes, were rigged on election day proper. And that is actually the difference between exit polls and this so-called official Central Election Commission results. The exit polls gave them around 40, the official results, so-called, gave them 54. And there were several schemes that they used. So it was an electronically assisted voting without fingerprints. And so these electronic machines, each of them had the entire country's database inside, voter database, but they were not connected to one another. So there were tons of instances of multiple voting, and the system didn't detect it. And also, for example, there are so many Georgians abroad, hundreds of thousands of Georgians are abroad and are not registered as voters because it's different hardships to vote abroad, and that's a different issue. So they basically took other people's IDs and voted multiple times on their behalf. And There were some instances when some Georgians came into the country on election day to vote here, and they were told that, sorry, you already voted. So things like that. I remember at some pressings, the the overall turnout was not above 100%, but the gender-based turnout was like there were more men voting than men registered to vote at that station. Various things like that. It was a major psychological operation too, because people had a big anticipation for change. They were very hopeful because we understood that this would be the last chance um, to truly peacefully, truly non-violently get rid of this Russian regime. But yeah, and suddenly the reality hit hard. So the next few weeks were rather depressive. Yes, there were protests, of course, and it was very important that the democratic forces did not enter this fraudulent, illegitimate parliament. That was a very big stone, very big step into delegitimizing this illegitimate regime for real. And even now that most leaders of democratic forces are jailed, this so-called prime minister says that essentially he always refers to them not having recognized the parliament as legitimate. So we can understand how much it hurt them that the democratic forces refused to enter the parliament. Oh, and I also forgot that there was also a major issue of violation of voter secrecy. So on the other side of ballot, one could see who a person voted for, which was a huge tool for the regime because from the morning on the word was out that it was a transparent ballot, which should not have been so, and by evening everyone was I suppose like scared to vote against them because Georgia is a very, very poor country. I don't know, maybe a third or even more of population depends on state funding, and even more, I suppose. Like I meant welfare, state welfare, but like if you include people who work at state jobs, and the state has near totalitarian knowledge on everyone. Your father is in jail, your mother needs cancer treatment, your son like has problems at school. So and they know how to weaponize this. And the entire pre-election campaign, us democratic forces, we were saying that, oh, people don't worry, they're just scaring you, no one will know who you voted for. And the regime was like, well, actually we will know who you voted for. And because of this transparent ballot they really did. So it's probably affected people's voting, although this is not measurable. We can just assume based on situation in Georgia. And then there was this whole thing that even procedural side of the convocation of this current parliament was in violation of the constitution. So we are absolutely completely beyond constitutional framework. And then after a month, it was this famous declaration that they hold EU accession, and that is when this large-scale protest began.
So just give me a moment. Thanks everyone for joining in the chat. Sorry about starting a tiny bit later than normal. If you've got any questions for us, please come in the chat. Hopefully the audio is working. You can hear us both okay. So please do let us know. Please engage with us as we go on. That's really appreciated. Thank you so much, Marika, for joining us. I have a delivery at the door, so I have to go quickly and get that. So I will just put my camera on pause for a moment, but before I do that, I want to ask you a question just so we don't leave it as dead space. So, but I will be back and I am listening. I can hear it on the speaker. So, my question to you is, there was a lead up to this in the election campaign as well. Like there was this law that they tried to bring in about NGOs and foreign funding, and I saw some people trying to defend those laws, which have very striking similarities to the Kremlin laws that they enacted regarding human rights organizations. And a lot of the work that foreign organizations was really vital for developing Georgia, and that seems to have affected a lot of people and been one of the catalysts for this. So could you give us some context about that and why Georgian Dream became so unpopular with the general people of Georgia, and it looked like they were heading to a lost election?
Well, in general, the Georgian Dream came to power in 2012, and they were pretending to be European, or to sit on both chairs anyway. So their entire mantra was that they um, they could deliver on Georgia's European integration promise without irritating Russia. Like that's possible to really have agency over what irritates Russia and what doesn't. But 2010s were a different time. It was the Russia reset in Obama's administration. The world was embracing Russia as maybe problematic, but still an ally. And yes, anyway, they tried to pretend to be European for more than 10 years. But from 2022, from Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, they could not afford this double face that much anymore. Well, internally they still managed to convince some people that they are pro-European, but I mean the international audiences, of course, they could increasingly see through the Georgian Dream because they had to choose a side at that point, and I think Russia was also pressing very hard uh, to make them to make them do some like more pro-Russian steps. Like for example, they were helping, and they're still helping Russia with sanctions evasion. And well, that is a fact, right? Russia demanded it from them. I would say that they began state capture long ago, but unfortunately, the majority of population um, they had this illusion of security that Georgia can never be brought back onto Russian orbit. It's impossible to take Georgia away from European integration because the public will is so overwhelming. It's like 80% of population willing to go through with 85% of population wants European integration. So even political forces, I would say, a majority of them, unfortunately, had this illusion of security. And for that reason, Georgians let some things fly under the radar. So they could, from like 2018, 19, 20, they could see that things were not going right, but they still thought that okay, well, overall, we're still going um, towards European integration, and uh, but then increasingly, as I said, after 2022, they couldn't pretend as much, and people were starting to see where it was headed because they were not respecting Georgian fighters in Ukraine. Quite the opposite. They even threatened to strip them of Georgian citizenship. And their anti-Western, anti-Ukrainian, and pro-Russian rhetoric began really gaining momentum after the full-scale war. But I would say that things got like absolutely clear um, for even more percentage of Georgian population last year with this Russian law, foreign agents law, and the cherry on top was, of course, this torture of protesters in December now. And I actually know some people who voted Georgian Dream in October, but they are now at protests every single day. So it was a slow boiling of the frog for more than 10 years, and now it's very rapid. Now it's very rapid. They are adopting dictatorial laws, like maybe law per minute. We should come up with a unit like law per minute or something like that. So Georgian people, I would say that it took us long to face the truth, well, not least so because again we had this illusion of security and confidence in the percentage of European support in Georgian population. And I always tell other nations like never be too confident, never have that illusion of security, But yeah, since last April and especially since like November, December, that is when Georgian people really like large scale understood that we are essentially a country captured by a Russian regime. So Russians took over Georgia, and we currently see them as an occupation force, occupation administration.
So look, that's a lot to take in for people who might not be familiar with the ins and outs. So thank you for priming all of that for us. It really sounds like a really difficult situation. Before we get into the protest movement in general, a lot of Georgian politicians, opposition politicians, have been arrested since that election, fraudulent election. A lot of Georgian politicians, opposition politicians, have been arrested on frivolous, spurious charges. So, can you talk to us a bit about that? Because you're operating in a really difficult environment there in Georgia, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, we now have a vast majority of opposition leaders in jail. They'll probably be going after heads of CSOs and then the second layer of opposition politicians. And I think I'm also somewhere nearby. So, yeah, no, it is definitely the worst nightmare for so many people. And to be honest, I could see it going this way, but I also had this tiny bit of illusion of security that maybe they would not be able to go through with some steps because Georgian people are so pro-European, and that it would cause public unrest. But yeah, so I'm sorry. Did you have any specific question about situation in Georgia or?
Yeah, I mean, talk to us about what's happened with those politicians. Who's been arrested? What's been going on
Oh
behind the
yeah,
scenes?
yeah. So after from about 9 or 10 leaders of democratic forces that I would name as the most prominent. Six are currently in jail. One is not in Georgia, and we don't really know when he'll be returning. He's also facing prosecution. And two are women with minor children. And I think that is the only reason why they're still not jailed, but they have other sorts of intimidation going on. One of them was jailed briefly on administrative charges, Elena Khoshdaria, in late March, and she was horribly mistreated in jail. And another one's husband, Tina Boguchava's husband, he was abducted, and they threatened with his children, like they share children with this opposition leader over something. Like he didn't do something. It was a very minor thing, but nevertheless, like so, these women are also under terror, although they're not fully in jail. Um, so the thing is, this Georgian Dream party, they promised before elections, before October elections, jail. To jail opposition leaders, to ban opposition parties, and to basically anyway yeah, like everyone underestimated them, and they especially our foreign partners, they thought that the Georgian Dream was bluffing or having some bizarre pre-election campaign that no one really asked for, but we can see that they were quite consistent in their plan and they were very honest. So what happened was that they set up a so-called parliamentary commission a few months ago, and officially this commission is instructed to or authorized to like investigate crimes of the previous government. That is their official task. And under that investigation, they entitled themselves to summon all current leaders, and not just leaders, anyone, for investigation, and then they are to testify against some things, and not showing up for this commission, which we call like a Stalin era commission, implies um, imprisonment for up to a year or an unlimited amount of fine. But they went for imprisonment. They opted for imprisoning people. So it was a principled position of democratic leaders that they would not cooperate with this Soviet era circus. So no one went there, and that is why they're currently in jail. But the uh, ridiculous thing is that many of them were not even officials or anyhow affiliated with the previous government. So it is already an absurd to, I don't know, investigate crimes or something in that particular form. But they are going so beyond scope. They are imprisoning people who had nothing to do with the previous government. And honestly, in case of one leader, Georgi Vashadze, I think he wasn't even told what his case exactly was. So I think he wasn't even told why this commission was summoning him. It was simply that they summoned him, and he said no or something like that, and that is why he's in jail. Basically, it is absolute absurd. They have not committed any crimes other than simply being leaders of democratic forces. And I would like to say that this so-called parliamentary commission, it was set up with the aim to imprison these leaders, and not just these leaders, but anyone. Their scope can cover just anyone. That was the main task of this commission, but also they are rewriting history in Russian prism. This commission will come out with some conclusions, and they already promised us some specific conclusions, such as they said that they will declare 2003 Rose Revolution as a coup, not a color revolution. So this is completely a Russian narrative that color revolutions that happened in this post-Soviet space are not really public revolutions. It is a coup sponsored by outside powers against legitimate governments. And this is what they have been saying in their rhetoric for ages, but now they will conclude so, and they are also will likely also conclude that Georgia started the 2008 war against Russia, which they have already also been saying, and they one of their pre-election promises, which was very unpopular, and people back then couldn't understand why they were going for this promise, was that they said they will apologize to South Ossetians and Abkhazians. These are the separatist territories of Georgia that are militarily backed by Russia. They're occupied by Russia. So they said that they would apologize, and this was crazy because even among their own supporters, this message was not popular. But they care little about popular. They can now do anything. They are completely operating under Russian command, and they're like, oh, if you don't like it, then bring me down. I dare you, if you are such a tough boy, right? So like, what do they have to lose? They are already deeply unpopular. Protests are ongoing every single day for more than 7 months. We lack some. One thing that we have been lacking was clarity among democratic forces. And for months and months, my party and some other parties, we were really waiting for quite some other parties to agree with our common vision of future strategy. And this really dragged out the process. Um, and well, now we are uh, not waiting as much now. I think we are done waiting and we are taking tangible steps. But in the meantime, time passes. They adopt more and more dictatorial laws. They jail more people. Yeah.
So listen, that's a lot. I can't imagine what it's been like to witness all of that, to see your country slide from democracy to effectively autocracy. We've watched it happen in real time. This government becoming more increasingly in sync with what the Kremlin wants. I've just got a couple comments, so I'll just read from them. Dave from next door, thank you so much. Awesome presence. This question about me. Firstly, I'm from Lebanese origin, and about conservative societies, and about the Georgian Dream accusing the opposition of advancing an LGBT agenda. And I will say, from my experience here in the UK, in the Middle East, in Ukraine, seeing stuff happening in Poland and Hungary, that liberal opposition to these autocratic governments being outwardly and outspokenly in front of our community, the LGBT community, is something that we should actively advance and fight for. It's not a fight that we should be willing to concede to reactionary forces like the Georgian Dream. That's my opinion. I'm not. I'll let Marika speak for herself. But also, we've had another question from Awesome Presence saying, Marika posted that your party's facing a cash crunch. How can people help if they wanted to support you? Back to you, Marika, on that question. But also, the protest movement started after all of this began, or after the election was essentially thrown in favour of Georgian Dream. What have been the positives that have come out of that, and what have been the negatives? Obviously, it's failed to achieve a major change in government policy. The government seems to be getting more and more draconian. There are a lot of parallels between what happened in Georgia across many years and what's happened here in Ukraine. A lot of people saying at first this is Georgia's Euromaidan moment, but there are clearly differences between the two as well. People may probably be a bit more familiar with what's happening in Ukraine. If you could talk about the differences in those protest movements and what really you're going through day in, day out in Georgia now at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Should I answer the questions first, or should I
Sure, yeah, go. Well,
answer
yeah,
your questions
yeah, go.
first? Yeah.
Whichever is fine.
I think I'll briefly answer the two questions,
Okay.
if it's okay. Yeah, LGBT. Actually, in Georgia, opposition and democratic forces never really took upon advocating for LGBT. Yes, of course, we are completely um, supportive of LGBT in terms of like human rights and to not be discriminated against. But like, it is not something that the opposition really communicated or branded itself with. So the Georgian Dream simply took this topic from Russian playbook and assigned it to us. So they call us LGBT much more than the collective democratic forces have expressed any opinion on LGBT. In terms of how to deal with it, yes, it's a great question. Like sometimes there are various opinions, like let's not give the regime the material for propaganda. But then other times you're also bordering on getting scared into inaction or scared into not protecting people. So my party, we always express solidarity, always express stances against discrimination, and we are quite big on like do not get scared by propaganda things. But yes, of course, like some things are logical. For example, even LGBT community themselves, like they try to refrain from bringing pride flags at certain occasions, at rallies, so as to not stir up propaganda. I think whatever we do, we have to like. And not just we in Georgia, we in general, people who fight for freedom in the world should do it in coordination with LGBT communities themselves. For example, there have been instances where I thought that, yeah, definitely, like, let's not be scared of propaganda, let's do this. But then the LGBT people themselves, they're like, no, like, let's not poke the bear in terms of. So it's a little conflicting, to be honest. Um, but yeah, you should always try to stay true to yourself and also communicate on strategy with the LGBT community. As for cash, that yes, cash shortage, like funding shortage for my party, that is a very big issue because the Georgian Dream made sure that none of us would have any funding, neither foreign nor local. The local funding is problematic because all the businesses in Georgia, they are minuscule in comparison with resources that this shadow dictator has. He's a billionaire. Back in 2015, his assets were worth 35% of Georgia's GDP. And now it's around 25% of Georgia's GDP, and that is just him. You can imagine the entire network and the state, but state money is his money now, right? Because he can do whatever he wants. So businesses, especially given that there's no independent judiciary, they're very afraid of overnight crackdown, closing down, sorry. And that is why we depend on crowdfunding, but it is very new to us. And my party leader, Elena Khoshdaria, is one of only two leaders who are not in jail, basically. Yes, like there are other leaders as well, but two or three leaders who are leaders of like major parties who passed the threshold in last election. So a lot depends on her. In my coalition, there were four leaders, and she's the only one out of the four who are not in jail. And a lot depends on her in terms of the organizational capacity of the protests, the coordinating various networks, things like that, which now we want to do because now that we're not waiting for some people in democratic forces to communicate their strategy with us, we're like, okay, we're going for it. We're going for what we believe is right. And in that regard, my party now like finds itself in this organizational epicenter, and for that reason we really would appreciate any support, financial, however minor. And I have it pinned on my Twitter, the post and the PayPal and everything, and thank you very much. As for Maidan, yeah, the propaganda was very big on calling us Maidan people, and finding the patterns of American interference in Ukraine and Georgia and so on. Um, I would say that there are serious differences, and that largely stems from what the regime learned from Yanukovych's lessons. So basically, in November, December, the regime understood that their crackdowns, their torture of people, so like physical force and violence, backfired. And if they didn't stop, it would spiral over into completely uncontrolled processes, and it would end with overthrow of the Georgian Dream regime in December. They understood that, especially that Georgia is a small country, everyone knows everyone, and like violence resonates so much deeper. If you kill a couple people here, it's something like same effect as maybe like 100 people elsewhere, because again, everyone knows everyone, and uh, so they were extremely careful not to kill anyone. So they tortured people to near death in December. But these survivors, they remember that policeman told the one who was torturing them, like, wait, like he's dying already, stop. So they were careful not to kill people, although it is actually a miracle that no one died by accident, because like they people suffered such injuries that even if the police didn't deliberately want to kill them, they might have ended up dead anyway. Um, so they learned this Yanukovych lesson, and this is actually what people usually forget about Ukraine. Like uh, sometimes I get asked like, why don't Georgians go more violent? Why don't Georgians get like into more action? Uh, well, in Ukraine, that happened because the regime began killing people first. So that's a major difference. And everything snowballed since then. Had they killed people, their propaganda would have completely collapsed. No one would have cared what we're doing, who we are. It would, yeah, and they would be finished in December. And they understood that. That's why they stopped with crackdowns and moved to financial terror and legislative terror, something that is not physically visible that much, not physical violence that much, but suffocates you or and like makes your life impossible or like forces you out of the country, and that is what they hope in. Uh, yeah, I also find differences with Russia and Belarus. So I think Georgia is somewhat of a hybrid case and will eventually be a scenario of its own. So currently, people only have understanding of a Ukrainian scenario or Belarusian scenario, but I think that it will be a very Georgian scenario in that regard. Something neither here nor there. Um, Difference with Russia is that in Georgia it is very, very much tied to national identity. And I don't believe that people would be protesting like so valiantly for so long for only democracy and rule of law, which to be fair, like Georgians never really experienced in a long established generational manner, right? But it's about national identity for us. Democracy, pro European path, anti Kremlism is very much about national identity. And this is what gives us this irrational, emotional, physical fuel to persist. And I really believe that this works wonders. This wasn't the case in Belarus either. And in difference, and like differently to Belarus, also, it's not a long established dictatorship. It's still vulnerable to outside pressures. Um, we still have like political fabric or structure in parties, CSOs, independent media, although it is very hard to maintain them now, but still, because again, in Belarus, things were completely dictatorial even before 2020, and that isn't the case here. I keep hoping that this very accelerated pace of the Georgian Dream to establish a dictatorship is, is in a way their lack of confidence, because I was thinking like if I adopt a law, I would want people to get intimidated by those laws first before throwing new laws, because like when you do it slowly, it penetrates people more, and then people might start adjusting to those laws, like taking a step back or like trying to fit the forms of protest that are still allowed. But when you throw everything together at once, people are like, well, everything is banned anyway, so why do we care? Like, let's do whatever we want anyway. So that seems to be kind of the case in Georgia now, and they are very, very much in a rush to apparently force us into inaction before they crack themselves first. And I suppose that they will crack at some point. I'm very positive that with complete non cooperation at home, no to these upcoming SHEM elections that are local elections in October, diversifying and intensifying protests, and work with our foreign partners, and sanctions really hurt them. Also, indifference with Belarus, sanctions do really hurt them because they are only trying to consolidate just now, and all their pillars and enablers they were there for good life and social status and respect also in the West and for the European and American education of their children. They were not there for an outright dictatorship. That is what they ended up with. So, yeah, sanctions do help, and I believe with sanctions, targeted, timely sanctions, the protests and non-cooperation at home, it is very possible to make them crack, and they probably know it. That's why they're in a hurry that much. I expect that they will, over the summer, like have a sweeping crackdown on us. I don't know, they might jail half of the country over the summer. That's what I expect. But then at some point, it will should reach a breaking point if we ourselves do not announce capitulation first. That is what I believe. I'm glad to see that most people are not leaving, especially jail candidates. They're not leaving.
Well, I mean, I just want to say you're very brave for sticking it out there. I know a lot of people are deciding to leave, as you said, but you're saying a lot are also sticking around to stand up to what's happening there. Again, I just want to say to some of the people in the chat, thanks so much for asking questions. No worries, Orson, it's much appreciated. Anyway, really keep them coming. If you've got any questions, put them in. If you're watching on YouTube and can't ask any questions, thanks. So you can put some questions down there in the chat box below, and I'll try and get back to them through the YouTube channel. Thanks all for watching, subscribing, liking. Really appreciated, and really appreciate you guys live here, and really appreciate you guys on YouTube too. So you talked about where things are now and what's coming, you think, in the summer. Again, we all want to say we really support all the work that you're doing out there, and hope that you all manage to stay safe. But you're saying the protest movements are still ongoing. They haven't really lost momentum or steam. You think that they are heading towards a point that they're going to start really impacting the government in some way?
I hope so. I mean, the daily protests are understandably not very numerous because people are out for more than 7 months. So sometimes it's a few hundred people out. But the thing is that the regime is not able to really prevent them being there. And for us, closing the road where the parliament is, which is Rustaveli Avenue, is some sort of a continuity threshold of the protest. And for us, the continuity is very important. And whenever they try to prevent us from blocking the road, then thousands of others come out immediately. So most people seem to be like, okay, so the road is closed today, so like the protest is there. I might mind my own business this evening, which is a little unfair to those people who are there every day. But nevertheless, like people have this perception of continuity, and when that is prevent it or they try to prevent it, then so many people are out again. And then we also have spontaneous sparkle. Like there were several instances when something rather major happened, and then there were again thousands out. So it is a very flammable situation. Like it only needs a very teeny tiny thing, like I don't know, like um, it's in the air. Maybe hundreds of thousands are not in the streets every single day, but it's in the air, and it only needs like a tiny spark to make it 100,000 again. Um, in Georgia is a population of 3.6 million or something like that. Last year there was one particular protest against the Russian law, and the attendance was around 300,000. That was the measure. So like almost 10% of the country is attending one particular protest. So that is what I think about protests. It's there, it's going on, and people are persisting in protest even when they don't really see a clear pathway to what's next, and even when the democratic forces were not clear on what's next. So imagine what a semi-centralized, coordinated, rather top-down organization of protest can achieve, right? Yeah, that's it. And I think that is the case, and eventually, yes, they will crack. But this is such a regime that they will pretend to be tough and pretend to be invincible until the last minute. And you never know when this last minute comes. So you just have to persist, not give up, and keep going. As Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going, and just have a faith that you'll win. Because yeah, because they will pretend to be tough until the last minute. But we already have some indications that they're very uncomfortable. They have inter-clan struggles. There are high-profile resignations of so-called cabinet members and others in ministries. They are at each other's throats, the internal clans. And by the way, a big portion of this owes to international sanctions. And again, like yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, you're really keen on stressing that point on sanctions. You want more support, lobbying for sanctions in European countries. People may be tuning in from Canada or America. You want to lobby their representatives to put some sanctions on Georgian Dream officials. We've got another question from Orson here, actually a good one. I think I know the answer to it. I think we all know the answer to it, given our experience, our collective experience dealing with pro-Russian propaganda and Kremlin-aligned dictatorships and governments expressing their pro-Kremlin views. But he says that now that US aid is gone, and that the Georgian Dream have banned foreign money coming into NGOs in Georgia. What's the new Georgian Dream argument about the protests? You know, that they're still foreign. I assume they're still saying it's all foreign funded, even though they've made it very definitively clear that no money's coming into the country from at least official channels. And we've got another question here from Dave Resolve, Dave next door. I mean, amazing strength and resolve from the protesters. I really hope the moment of weakness, capitulation for the government comes really soon. So yeah, what's going on with the new argument from Georgian Dream, which I presume is the same as the old argument about what's going on in their country, given that they've already banned all the foreign funding, basically.
Yeah, well, they really don't need any tangible evidence or anything to keep on with their propaganda. They still say that we are all foreign funded. We want war with Russia, and we are traitors, sellouts who only just want to see Georgia collapse and to be in ruins and bombed by Russia. And that is what we want. That is how they brainwash their police, also, especially the so-called riot police, which I call special forces because that's the direct translation from Georgian, and describes their essence more, because there are actually no riots in Georgia. They're very, very peaceful, non-violent protests that don't even harm anyone's property. So they brainwash this police into thinking that we are, of course, all gays who want war in Georgia. And then they say, when they beat up people, yes, they call them gays, they call them American agents, European agents. Um, and they say, so now that you'll bring war in Georgia and that is what you want, you will run away, and I will have to be the one to fight Russians, right? So, like, they really don't need the USAID or anything. They already have, like, oh, they already see us and communicate about us in their propaganda that we are these evil people, and even if they get rid of all of us, they will start treating others, the young people who will succeed us, as the successors of those evil people. That's it. Like, they don't need anything else. Oh, I don't hear you. I'm so sorry.
So take us to where we are now, basically. You know, you're still out there fighting the good fight. You're still pushing for change. Where do you see things developing over the next few months, years? Particularly seeing as the Georgian Dream are making it very clear that they don't care that they're unpopular. They're going to keep, you know, digging in and you know. Resisting efforts to hold new elections, or you know, they don't seem to care about popular legitimacy anymore. That seems to be very, very, very worrying. And I suppose their thinking is that they can outlast the protesters. So, what's the kind of general understanding about the situation that you're all in, and the difficult one you're seeing your comrades being arrested? You know that the space for your activism at all is being constricted by this regime. So, what are the steps to address those things as they're coming at you? Those incredibly difficult things that basically none of us would really have any experience with, but the Georgian people, same as the Ukrainians, had to learn this the hard way.
Steps to address it, like what we should do in that regard.
No, not necessarily what you should be doing, but I mean, how is the protest movement reacting to these developments? The increase in arrests, the tortures, the beatings. How does a movement such as yours, a democratic liberal one, react to an autocratic regime cracking down on you in such a way, but again, as you said, stopping short of that line of violence? And how do you guys prevent yourselves from being the ones that instigate violence against the police and give them an excuse to crack down further, for example?
Georgians, those who gather daily at the protest, like they are just average people, grandmas, grandpas, so they aren't really. I would say that now the protests, while they were very commendable and like persisting, they were sort of in a stagnation mode. Stagnation, not in the sense that the protest would end or wane or anything, but the people's focus was on maintaining the existing protest, and they made sure that every day the continuity was there. But I would suppose that for a step further, for something different to happen at the protest, either the regime has to do something spectacularly terrible, like I don't know, recognize the independence of Abkhazia, or um, or get violent first again, or third version is that there has to be some sort of a top-down guidance, organizational side on how to intensify the protest. And I don't even mean the non. I don't even mean the violent side, like, but I mean road blockages, picketing, and things like that. Something that is non-violent in character, but really disturbs the regime, like. Paralyzing the entire city and things like that. So I suppose, yeah, we are headed for the third version. At least that is what we are preparing to do. We are trying to have a more coordinated, more top-down, more semi-centralized protests that are intense and non-violent at the same time. And then I'm pretty sure that. Unfortunately, most likely we will not be able to really avoid all incidents, because if we do this kind of intense nonviolent protests very frequently over the season of autumn, then like at some point the police will probably interfere, and then there's another round of, I don't know, maybe even a large scale crackdown. So that is on their conscience, as we say. They are very much welcome to just realize that they will not be able to govern this country, and the more time passes, the more I feel like soon it will become ungovernable. So they're very welcome to just leave. Because our aim is not to cause crackdowns. I'm just saying that with with intensifying protests, it is extremely logical to assume that they will also be reacting at some point. So I do not really see how we will have a calm autumn. And in this kind of situations, there's so many accidental factors, um, and so many things that you cannot foresee. you can only just know the way that is right, and that is non-cooperation and protesting. And by non-cooperation, I mean everything, not going to their uh, so-called parliamentary commissions, not complying with their laws and demands, not participating in their sham elections. And yeah, again, I don't know, they really can't jail the entire country. I think their
Well,
best
listen,
is
that's really
yeah.
interesting. If you could talk us through some of those strategies of non-compliance, civil disobedience, that you guys are going through, that you guys are implementing to try and make, as you said, Georgia ungovernable. Um, you know, particularly around the world, this is going to be really new information for how they go about something like this. And if you're sat in a country like America, which is going through a really, draconian turn, particularly with this vicious, effectively fascist police force violating the civil rights of immigrants. These are incredibly worrying times. So, what are you guys doing, and how are you implementing those strategies to try and make an impact on a government that effectively wants to crush your movement?
Well, currently, I would say the methods of non-compliance is just protesting, because that is also outlawed. Basically, wearing masks at the protest, because otherwise people would be identified, and the fine for single protesting is 4 times the national monthly median income. So national monthly median income is around 400 euros. Yes, Georgia is a very poor country, and fine for single protesting is 1600 euros. So, and people do not pay fines. Some do, but some don't. So even just protesting is an act of non-compliance. But also, yes, there are. And this, dealing with this financial terror, or one very big act of non-compliance, like collective public non-compliance, has been this foreign agents law. No one registered as a foreign agent, and for that reason, everybody put themselves under the risk of various sanctions or fines, imprisonments. It was such a fiasco for the regime that they had to come up with a different law, because old law just like didn't really make sense at all. Um, and currently, it is also again non-compliance that organizations, CSOs, parties, politicians, leaders, we do not do as they tell us. And we are in this stage when now this costs us our freedom, in the sense that they're jailing those who do not comply. But that is what I mean. Like, if the non-compliance is widespread enough, and I think at this point I think we're somewhere nearing testing point on how to proceed. I see that from now on it should be something different. I can feel something brewing, but I can't really name it. But like, if the whole society does not comply, and so on, then yes, they cannot really jail everyone. At some point they will break, if we just don't give up first. And I don't think we will, because again, it is for Georgia very much tied with the national identity issue, which is, I think, what makes it different from Russia and even Belarus. And that is for us an inexhaustible fuel of energy and resources. And that is it. I believe that well, their best strategy is to throw everything at us in hopes that we'll get scared, and also in hopes that we will leave, right? Because it is much easier to rule over a country, part of which has gone into exile, rather than have thousands and thousands of prisoners in a country of 3.5 million. So that is our current non-compliance thing, but we will now see how it goes, because this is we are very much in the middle of this, and I am positive about the outcome if we just persist in this. But ask me another time how it went.
So we've had another question from Awesome Presence who says, if we use the PayPal, how does Droa avoid GD accusations of being foreign funded? I presume you're just getting on with it anyway, regardless. And also, if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't seen the link, and if you're watching on Twitch as well in playback mode, we'll put the link for Marika's party in the crowdfunder, the PayPal. We'll put that in the show notes, the description, to help you out. And the question I have beyond Awesome's question about PayPal is there a fear amongst you guys that if the government does come under real serious threat for its political survival, that you may end up with a real backlash and reaction from the Kremlin, such as we've seen in other parts of the world, not just Ukraine, obviously, but Ukraine being the most glaring example. And obviously Georgia has already experienced that with those two so-called separatist, republics. So if you could, give us your views on how that is being perceived, the threat that still exists from the Kremlin beyond the current protest movement.
Well, as for Droa being accused of foreign funding, they're accusing us anyway. So I don't think we are actually beyond the point where we care about the propaganda, unless there's something like outright disastrous happening on our side. This is just maybe some Georgian Dream supporters believe it, but at this point, I don't care much what they believe in, because we are the majority, and now it is about just like consolidating this majority into tangible actions. I don't think that it's even necessary for us to change the minds of those who are victims of GD propaganda that much. Um, yeah, that's about the funding stuff. And um, sorry, Oz, can you please repeat in one
Of
sentence?
course, yeah. I was asking about the fear that Russia
Oh
might
yeah,
might
sure,
might
sure.
yeah.
Well, yes, that is one of those fears that the Georgian Dream tries to instill. They are like, if the opposition comes to power, they will willingly enter war with Russia. That is one. But then the second one is, yes, that if the change of power happens, and then Russia will invade. That is less of a message they have, though. They are much bigger on the opposition will start the war with Russia. However, sometimes when they do say that if the opposition takes power, then Russia will invade, like, do they even realize that they're saying that essentially they are a Russian-backed government, or what? Anyway, but as for actual risks, I think that Russia is sufficiently busy elsewhere. And I hear some projections, some opinions from experts, military experts, also in the West, who say that, well, as long as the war in Ukraine is going on, and for some time after, Russia will not have any capacity to gather military power in the Caucasus. And yeah, I guess, well, this is yet another example how Ukraine is shielding freedom in other countries as well, and not just in Ukraine. And we owe a lot to Ukraine. And the Georgian Dream, I'm sure they were praying for Kiev to fall in 3 days, and they were extremely disappointed when it didn't happen. And even until now, they bet on Russia winning. And especially under at the beginning of Trump's second presidency, when it seemed like maybe Ukraine would be pushed for an unfair ceasefire. The Georgian Dream was just eager to say that, see, all these years we have been right, we were the wise ones, we just like outweighed the storm, and see how it happened. Russia still won, so we are the good guys. So That is what they were trying to. But I wouldn't say that anyone in Georgia is really forced into inaction that much because of this Russian threat. I don't know. Maybe I am just being very blunt about it, but I feel like those people who use it as an excuse, that's it. They use it as an excuse for their inaction and their comfortable life under dictatorship.
So, we've got a question here. As someone with no knowledge of Georgian politics, are there any cracks, schisms, or internal divisions within Georgian Dream defectors of the regime that could threaten or undermine their legitimacy? And the question that I had to you, or more of a comment really, was that it seems really crazy that Georgian Dream went into the election with one of their explicit arguments saying, we are the ones appeasing Russia, and if you don't vote for us, this is what they're going to do to us. And it just seems like a totally insane argument to make to people, your own people, as to why you should be voted for, because we are the only ones willing to be subservient enough to Russia that they don't bombard our civilian population. Again, it seems crazy, but that is quite literally, I saw posters of the Georgian Dream election campaign posters effectively making that case as well, and awesome president saying we owe everything to Ukraine. So Georgian Dream defectors legitimacy, anyone that could threaten or undermine the regime from within.
I'll just briefly address what you said. They twisted public minds sufficiently, and also the post-colonial legacy. Some things are perceived differently, so they are. Yes, but hopefully soon things will change, and then all their propaganda machine will collapse, just like the Night King was killed by Arya Stark and everyone disappeared, things like that. As for the cracks inside, Georgia is a small country and everyone knows everyone, and for that reason, everyone knows rumors. I don't know what portion of rumors are right, but the rumors that
We've lost you there briefly. I'm not sure why that's happened. Oh, hang on. You should bring you back in. There you go. Show on stream. There you go. You're back.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, no worries.
So there are rumors that the former prime minister and former head of state security service are under house arrest, home arrest, house arrest, and they got rid of everyone who is sanctioned. Everyone who's sanctioned resigned from high positions, and basically every clan, other than this current so-called prime minister's clan, is now fallen out of favor, because there are several major figures in the Georgian Dream, and everybody had their network of neighbors and network of friends who they employed in high positions, and now everyone except for this so-called Prime Minister Irakli Kobachidze's pals and buddies, they are out of favor now. So yes, they do have these internal struggles. There are always some reports that some businessman who's a supporter and enabler of the regime, he wasn't allowed out of the country until he paid money, because the system was paranoid that he would leave, and they wanted to ensure that he leaves them money first, so millions of dollars. So there is a lot of distrust, and again, a lot of it is sowed thanks to international sanctions.
So we had another question here from Baspor. Thanks everyone, especially first-time chatters. Thanks for coming on and asking questions. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks again so much for sticking through for so much of the show. Any likes, subscriptions, follows on all these platforms would be really, really great for the algorithms. Really appreciated. Baspor's question, does the EU, Europe help in any way? And what do you want them to do to help you? Obviously, you've touched on sanctions being as one of the important ones, but also moving on from that as well, the question is, obviously the Georgian Dream has basically halted Georgia's EU accession hopes. Where do those lie? Is that like the permanent position that Georgian Dream is just done with trying to appease anyone on Europe, and how is that being received by not just the population that's out protesting, but the wider voting general population that might not be ever the kind of person that goes out to a protest?
Yeah, the thing is that in Georgia, 85% of population is pro-European Union, and that is why no government ever in Georgia, no matter how illegitimate, can ever outright say that, like, no, we do not want European integration, or we like Russia, or things like that. I mean, although I'm lying, down the road, I do see the Georgian Dream saying in a couple of years, if they stay in power, that no to European integration outright. But then it will mean that they absolutely do not care about public legitimacy. Yes, they already don't care, but they still have some, around a third of population, thanks to bureaucracy, thanks to carrots and sticks and pressure and intimidation. So, like, if they don't want to lose whatever they have, they cannot say outright that they're ending European integration completely and fully. What they said in November was, technically, they said that they're ending it until 2028, and that in 2028 they will resume it. However, of course, most people do not believe this is the case, because we understand that they will have to go through democratic reforms that will unseat them if they want European integration. But the thing is, they still manage to fool some part of population, and they still, after all this time and all these things, manage to portray themselves as pro-European in part of the population. And what they're saying is that soon this protest will be over, and especially when the war in Ukraine is over, everything will get a reset, reshuffle, and we will be embraced again by the West. And so they're portraying it as a temporary inconvenience, these protests and the war, and that soon everybody will embrace the Georgian Dream, and Georgia won't have problems with European integration anymore, even under Georgian Dream rule. So for that reason, we always ask the European Union for absolute full clarity. Georgian Dream is so starved of legitimacy now that the entire regime, starting from so-called prime minister, they went in Milan to open a consulate there. So, and one time he managed to shake hands with Macron for a couple of seconds at a conference, and the propaganda insisted on it for 2 weeks. That, see, he's legitimate. Macron is shaking hands with them. So we always ask our European partners for complete non-engagement with the Georgian Dream. No photos, no handshakes, no nothing, no invitations, no conferences, because that is what will convince even Georgian Dream voters that there will not be business as usual. And no, these protests and all the things they did cannot be undone. So that is it. And we also want calls for new, free and fair parliamentary elections, of course, unconditional release of prisoners, maybe aid to CSOs and independent media as much as possible. I know that everything has been banned, but I am sure that where there's a will, there's a way. So we ask for that. And also for Georgia policy, to have a coherent policy on Georgia, and for all these measures that they take to have tangible outcomes, like for it to be efforts that are in a coordinated puzzle rather than like chaotic steps which might not yield the same results.
Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us. I want to say thanks to everyone else that's tuning in. The fan engagement really helps, because we just had a moment there with some echoing on the microphone that I couldn't hear on my end. But thanks to fan engagement from RGB RVB, I was able to fix it and find out in the settings there was a bit of an echo, so we managed to fix that. The usual Russian argument, awesome presence, the up is down. Yeah, effectively, we're well versed in Russian propaganda. So look, I've got a final question to you, and maybe there may be some more questions from the audience, so please fire them in. If you're a first time, haven't said anything, please, we really encourage you to start speaking and using the chat for that. But you talk about Georgian Dream voters, and the question is, it seems you haven't given up on the electoral path, even though the entire basic democratic movement in Georgia is convinced that the Georgian Dream rigged the last election to make it look like they won, rather than accepting defeat and conceding to you democratically. Looking on to the future and towards potentially the next general election, you're talking about non-participation in the local elections. Obviously, the Venezuelans had a very similar thing happen as well. They had the Juan Guaido moment that didn't work out, and then they really, really believed that they had momentum going into that election, and then again the government basically said, "No, look, we won. Look at all these numbers from nowhere." That's a really demoralizing thing for any movement of change, to be able to get over that democratic legitimacy threshold in a country that isn't free and fair, isn't open, isn't allowing the democratic process to happen. But yet still you're talking about electoralism, and what is the plan for the next general election? You're not going to participate in the locals, but if there has been no change in government at the next general election, what will be the strategy at that point?
I'm sorry if I left the impression that I still believe in electoral process. No, I don't. Not at all. If this regime stays in power, I will be boycotting any and all elections. When we ask for new free and fair parliamentary elections, that's what we mean. It should be free and fair, which essentially means that the Georgian Dream should break and allow freedom before the election day, which essentially means that they will be defeated before election day, and they will know that. If we ever go to polls thinking, oh, what will be the outcome? Then the outcome will definitely be defeat for us, right? So that's it. They have to, before any elections happen in Georgia that the people of Georgia will accept, it has to be a free Central Election Commission, free, the election process, absolutely independent from state pressure, pressure from state security service, and things like that. So for me, there's absolutely no elections in Georgia until the regime changes or breaks to the point that they'll have to allow new elections and basically admit defeat before election day. So, and that is, by the way, the majority will of the public. Just a couple of days ago, there was a poll that said that essentially 70% of Democratic Forces supporters, they do not want to see our participation in the local elections. And I suppose that would be the same figure for parliamentary that is conducted under the Georgian Dream rules. We don't want their game for this. Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was muted there. My apologies. So what I wanted to say is thanks, a huge thanks and admiration to you for everything you're doing. We all here want to express our solidarity with the fight that you guys are going through. You have our, unconditional support, and we hope you manage to stay safe and stay out of harm's way, and win and triumph in your democratic, legitimacy, the rights of your people to have a government that actually represents them, So yeah, we all just want to say thank you so much. You've given us like an hour and 20 minutes of your time. I know it's late there as well. So thanks so much. And look,
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
we'd love to invite you back on the show at some point to keep us all updated with how things are going. Big thanks to everyone who's been there. Hi, Liquid Amber. Thanks, RGB, RVB. Your input's been valuable. Thanks to the first time chatters, and thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, Marika. Is there any final words you wanted to leave people with? We're obviously going to put your PayPal link in the show notes, but if you could just give us your final thoughts and round up and what you hope the audience can maybe do for you guys back in Georgia at the moment.
I would say probably two things. Never have the illusion of security. As Ronald Reagan said, we didn't pass on freedom to our children in the bloodstream. It has to be like won by every generation. So that is one. Another is, I suppose, that unfortunately, so many people, they need to have a recipe for victory and specific guidelines and timelines for victory, but and that is what the dictatorships count on. You just have to keep pushing even when you are at that moment feeling hopeless. You have to know the way, which is correct, and in our case it is non-cooperation and protest. And also third, in my experience, compromise never helps. Like any compromise with such a regime is the deal with the devil. As for what can be done to Georgians, yeah, it's amplifying our voices, I guess, pushing for coverage of Georgia in media. This is something that everyone can do, and if anyone can reach out to their national parliaments, governments to act on specific steps against the Georgian Dream, that would be great. And thank you everyone for your engagement, for your comments and questions. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you all very much. It really was my pleasure. Sorry for the initial several minutes of technical
No,
struggle.
that's on me. We've got a couple more comments there saying, Abel Des, thank you for your first time chat. Saying thanks for bringing such an inspirational figure. Spazalot says, stay strong, Marika. Liquid Amber says, thanks, Marika, all the best. And Dave from next door says, you really are an impressive person. So you've got all of my supporters, the Oz Katerji show supporters are all rooting for you, Marika. So yeah, we'll put links to your. I've already put links to your socials out. I'll make sure that we're done there. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll have a good night. I'll just round off with some final words for the audience. But take care, and thanks so much for joining us, Marika. All the best.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.